If you're just joining us, welcome to STL101, supporting our international community, immigration updates, and resources for St. Louis. The presentation will begin shortly. We're just giving people a few minutes to log in. The presentation will begin shortly. So if you're joining us, welcome to STL101, supporting our international community, immigration updates, and resources for St. Louis. Thank you. Welcome to STL101, supporting our international community, immigration updates, and resources for St. Louis. My name is Anne Mbale. I'm the program manager for St. Louis Mosaic Project. Thank you for joining us. Today's speakers do not need much of an introduction since they have been doing this work for a while now, but probably when some of you met them, they were not in the positions they are today. So I'll read a little bit bio of them. But before I go to that, just a few housekeeping rules to let you know about. All participants will be muted for the duration of the presentation. However, if you wish to ask questions, please do not hesitate. Use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to get to those at the end of the formal discussion. The slides and the recording of the presentation will be available a few days after the webinar is completed. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our speakers today, who I'm excited about. And I'll start with Blake. Blake Hamilton is the president and the CEO of the International Institute of St. Louis. He leads a team dedicated to creating opportunities for refugees and immigrants to thrive in order to create a more welcoming, healthy, and prosperous region for all. Over more than 16 years at the Institute, Blake has guided workforce, education, and immigration services, expanded immigration legal support, and championed small business growth through the Institute Community Development Corporation. Blake's work has been recognized by the St. Louis Partnership ACAS Award and Focus St. Louis What's Right with the Region Awards. Blake is known for his work in inclusive economic development and partners closely with civic, business, and nonprofit and neighborhood leaders to make St. Louis welcoming home for all. Now, Suzanne Sierra. Suzanne Sierra became the executive director of the St. Louis Mosaic Project in March of 2025, succeeding the founding director, Betsy Cohen. She previously served as assistant director, leading university partnership, the Mosaic Ambassador Company program, and launching STL Party, St. Louis for You. the region's only comprehensive bilingual platform for Latino population. Earlier in her career, Suzanne held roles at Freshman Herald, a global public relations firm, and Anheuser-Busch. She serves on the board of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and the Codex Inclusion Committee. Suzanne holds a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and is a graduate of Focus St. Louis. As the daughter of Colombian immigrants who were supported along the way by mentors, colleagues, and friends, she is passionate about helping our foreign-born individuals connect to resources that help them thrive. Over to you, Suzanne.
Thank you, Annie, and welcome everyone. I'm very excited to be with you today, and very excited that we have apparently quite a few, I think 102 people signed up to hear Blake and I. And so that's we love to know that there are so many people interested in staying on top of what's happening with our foreign-born community. As I have here on my title slide, immigration is an economic impact imperative. It is what we need to continue to grow the region. A little bit of context and background for who Mosaic is and the role that we play in the region's growth and economic development. So on the screen here, you see that the organization at the top is the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. That is our parent organization. We are a regional economic development organization working to strengthen the community, the economic impact throughout the city and the county. We work on attracting, retaining, and helping businesses grow through collaboration with public and private partners. Part of the partnership includes the World Trade Center of St. Louis, which is a nonprofit organization and one of 300 World Trade Centers in 100 different countries around the world. And the St. Louis Mosaic Project is an initiative of the World Trade Center. So everything that we do as a collective is focused on strengthening some aspect of the regional economy. And the Mosaic's role or focus area is on the foreign-born. So we were established in 2013 after an economic impact study that showed that for a city the size of St. Louis, we were really lagging in the number of foreign-born in our region as it compared to other peer cities similar in size to us. So for those of you who grew up in St. Louis, you may remember the heyday of in the 80s when St. Louis was a large, bustling metropolis, 10th largest metro, lots of companies headquartered here, robust population. And now, as you probably continue to hear in the news, we are continuing to lose population. And again, when we were established, it was because we saw that other cities, their growth was coming from immigrants, and we needed to do something to ensure that we were attracting and retaining our share of immigrants. And so that was the impetus for starting Mosaic and the work that we do. Annie, you met in when she kicked off the session. She and I do the work. We're a very small team. And our goal and our mission is to maintain St. Louis as a top destination for foreign-born growth by fostering a welcoming region. And I'll talk a little bit about how we do that. And it is very collaboratively. And as I said, it's two of us. So it's a lot of collaboration, partnerships, storytelling. At the end of the day, what we are trying to do is keep people here. People have talent, they bring skills, and that is what's going to drive the population and economic growth. In order for foreign-born individuals to stay, they need to have access to and be connected to jobs that match their skill sets, and also to networks and community organizations that are going to help them really put roots down and want to stay. As Annie mentioned, I'm the daughter of Colombian immigrants who came to this country years ago, didn't speak the language when they first came, didn't know anyone, And there was one individual who my dad met at his first position who happened to be from their home country, who had been in the city for longer than them, and she became their one-person Mosaic project. She was their pipeline for information and their connection so that they could really put down roots and feel like they belonged. So here are some demographic trends for the region. In between 2022 and 2023, St. Louis ranked number one among the top 30 metros for fastest growth of the immigrant population. And that's amazing because when we started in 2012, that was the goal a very aspirational goal that we set was to become the fastest growing major metro for immigration by the year 2025. And we achieved that. And I think it's interesting to note for everybody to see the way that immigration has fluctuated over the years in the region. And so again, we hit this high in 2023, and now, as we're about to hear, there are a lot of factors affecting the foreign-born population coming into St. Louis, and so we're on a little bit of a downward trend now. And so we need to, again, today is to talk about who's here, what brings them here, and more importantly, what can keep them here. And that's hopefully what you're going to hear about and think about how you can help in that capacity to retain these people. So demographically, our population is represented by three major groups: India, Mexico, and China, in that order of population. And, people often are curious or just aren't aware of not just the total number of immigrants that are here, but what are they giving back? What are they contributing to the economy? And you can see here that they pay billions in taxes. They have enormous spending power. They are starting and growing businesses. And of course, they are voters. So a little bit more information about who I'm talking about when I reference the foreign-born population in the region. We have a largely, the foreign-born that are here are largely of a professional, mid to high skilled professionals, and that comprises the executives and family bucket. So we have companies, large and small, who have been bringing global talent to work here, and those individuals, executives that are transferred, bring their spouses and their families, and often their spouses are also looking for work. They were professionals in their country of origin and come here and need to figure out how to apply what they did in their home country to jobs here. We have thousands of international students who still choose to study in America and choose to obtain a degree at one of our regional universities. We have entrepreneurs, as you just saw on my previous slide, hundreds and actually thousands of business founders who come here either with Arch grants, which promote St. Louis as a place for established entrepreneurs to move and to grow their business, as well as many small restaurants and business owners who are making their way and looking for innovative ways to provide services in the areas of healthcare and technology and many other sectors. And then we also have domestic transplants, or what we call sort of a secondary migration. And those are individuals who are living in other parts of the country and perhaps have family here, and they want to be closer to family, so they relocate here. And then we have refugees, and my community colleague Blake Hamilton from the Institute will really be talking and delving into more detail about the refugee population here. So those are the buckets of where we find international people. A lot of folks just don't really have a sense of who are the foreign-born individuals who live in the region. So I think it's really hard to turn on the news or look at your app or whatever channel you rely on for news and not hear about something that's happening that's affecting immigration. And um, from Mosaic's perspective, we deal primarily with the issues that affect the uh, professional and who comes here with an H-1B visa. And this is how employers hire many high-skilled international professionals. And then international students who come here to study for undergraduate and graduate degrees. And those individuals come here on an F1 student visa. So right now there are things, policies being discussed that would increase barriers, make it more expensive for a company or an employer to hire an H-1B, tighter entry rules, shifts in how the H-1Bs are awarded, which means right now they're talking about favoring giving more visas to people that have a higher wage, which means that smaller employers who can't afford higher wages, and especially international students who come out of college and are taking entry level jobs, will not be awarded those kinds of visas. So that means less talent can come and can stay here. Everything that's happening is creating more screening and longer processing times. This just delays hiring, travel, and all kinds of workforce planning. And what it does is it creates much less predictable pathways for international students. So, students come here and many want to stay here, but it's really hard to plan for your future if all of these processing and regulations and how long students can even stay after graduation, if all of that is up in the air, it causes a lot of confusion and chaos, which is, quite unfortunate, not just for the individual who wants to come and stay, but for the employer, for our universities, and for the economy. The good news, and there is hope amid the chaos and the confusion and the fear, is that we have an international population who is here and they want to stay. International students can work after graduation for up to 3 years. They remain on their student visa, which means they do not need additional sponsorship. We have many work authorized professionals of all skills who are ready to work. Those are people that have H-1B visas. Many of them have green cards. They're ready to work. They just need the connections. And then again, we have many entrepreneurs who are foreign born, who are starting businesses and looking for support, looking for customers, looking for mentors, looking for collaborators. The gap is access and connection to jobs, right? So the international talent who's here they have limited professional networks. I want all of you to think about going to another country where you don't speak that language well, and you have an advanced degree from here, you have a college degree, and you've worked for 5, 10, 15 years in a specific area of expertise, and you go to this new country and you have no idea how to start. What are the companies that do that kind of work? How do you get into the hiring pool? Who do you meet? How do you network? That is what is standing between the talent that's here and ready and eager to work and getting the jobs and filling that the talent gap. So, jobs are staying open and talent is being underutilized. And that's really the gap that we try to fill. So what we're doing and the kinds of programs that we have in place and how you can help include a professional connector program, which again is just a very simple way for us. We vet an individual who signs up and we learn about their background. And then we make a warm introduction to a connector, to somebody who has themselves a broad network of folks in a particular industry, who then meets with this foreign born job seeker and makes introductions to them so that they can start to find meaningful work, so they can understand what they need to be working on, what kinds of organizations they can tap into for guidance or maybe some additional skills. What sort of professional mixers should they be going to meet folks? And that's how it works that they then hopefully land in a job that matches their skills. We have a hiring challenge, which we launched last year and will be formally announcing in the next couple of weeks, which is really a way to help companies understand how to hire international students. And also, if you've never hired a professional before, how to go through that process. This challenge that we launched last year, we challenged 10 companies in the county and 10 in the city to participate and to hire international students. We started out with internships, and we had about 12 interns that were brought on, and one of them ended up getting hired full time. The international student talent that is here, I can't stress enough how they're they're a talent pool that is untapped. You can consider them for project work, for a limited time scope or project, for an internship, for a fellowship. We can help you through the steps of how to get that done. One of the things that we do, and it's through platforms like this, webinars or presentations to organizations, which we do throughout the year, is really working on the narrative of who is the immigrant population, why does it matter? As I said, what are they contributing? And because all of that goes a long way in educating and demystifying perhaps misconceptions about, how people arrive here, what they're doing while they're here, etc. So we have a Mosaic Story video series that is available on our website and on YouTube, where native St. Louisans interview a foreign-born individual, and they talk about their journey and their contributions, and and they get to know each other. So they're unscripted conversations that are really worth listening to, that you can follow, share, and then support individuals that you hear about, get to know them a little bit more. And then we have mentoring and social connection programs where we match foreign-born uh, individuals, women and men, with locals again, and the locals act as sort of a one-on-one, again, it's a mentor to really help them learn more about the nuances of living in St. Louis, help them more deeply integrate so that they learn how to love living in St. Louis and how to get things done and who to go for. All of that creates that sense of welcoming and belonging. And then, of course, our foreign-born entrepreneurs and small businesses on our website, and we will include links to this afterward, but we have an area there about community support, and we have links to restaurants and service providers and small businesses in the Latino community, Asian, African, Indian. We encourage you to seek those out and support them. So those are many ways that we can that you can take action to help us retain people here. Everything that we're doing and the moment that we're in right now calls for local action. We cannot control what's happening at the federal level, but we can do our part to work individually and together to build connections that keep the immigrant population here. That is the only way that St. Louis is going to grow. That's the only way that companies will be able to have loyal workers. And that's the economic impact, as I said, that's our imperative. So I thank you for listening. I thank you for spending your time with us today. At this point, I am very delighted to turn the conversation over to my community colleague and friend, Blake Hamilton, the president and CEO of the International Institute, who will talk about the immigrant populations that they serve and provide some additional context and suggestions for how you can help.
Thank you very much, Suzanne, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here and learn more about what we are doing here as a community to help support folks that are choosing to be here and choosing to build their lives here in St. Louis. Again, my name is Blake Hamilton. I'm president and CEO of the International Institute, and I have the pleasure of working very consistently with Suzanne and Annie and the folks at the St. Louis Mosaic Project to help new folks in our community really feel welcomed and help connect them to individuals, resources, and information that can help them live their dream here in our region. So if you are not fully versed in who we are as an organization, the International Institute supports immigrants and refugees alike, creating opportunities for immigrants and refugees to thrive in order to create a more welcoming, healthy, and prosperous region, really for all. As Suzanne mentioned, there were many different reports that led to the creation of the St. Louis Mosaic Project and really provided the basis on which that work was formed. And that work really pointed to the major economic impact that immigrants and refugees have on communities that welcome them. And so as a method both of being welcoming and providing safe haven for those who seek it, and also expanding the impact on our community and growing the economic pie in our region, we are also committed to continuing to welcome and provide the foundation for folks who are new to this community to grow and achieve their dreams. The International Institute does this in a variety of ways, and I have a slide that kind of goes through some of the areas of focus that we have as an organization. Since 1979, the establishment of the modern refugee resettlement program, the Institute has settled nearly 30,000 refugees over this period of time. And the rest of the stats here that you see really cover the breadth of our service areas, from job placement, emergency assistance, citizenship and immigration services, food distribution, as we launched this year with our food pantry, as well as tax assistance, economic development support for those that are seeking to start a small business, as well as youth and after-school programs that we have as an organization. Our services really touch the entire family and are meant to be supports to everybody who can make their life here in St. Louis. What you see here in terms of raw numbers, these are predominantly from 2024. And we're still working on closing out our reports for some services in this in the prior calendar year. However, I can tell you that the number that we've been able to affect when it comes to citizenship applications, for example, we served 68 folks with citizenship applications in 2025, a marked decrease from where we were in 2024. And there are many reasons for that. But I do want to go through a roster of some of these changes at the federal level that have really impacted our work since 2024 and have been things that have impacted predominantly the immigrant community here, not just in St. Louis, but across the country. It all really started a year ago today with Inauguration Day and the issuance of federal proclamations that really impacted broadly refugee resettlement, and executive order on day one did pause effectively immediately all refugee resettlement at a time when we here in St. Louis had 120 individuals scheduled for flights over the next 6 weeks or so that were summarily canceled. Of course, shortly thereafter, there was a stop work order from the Department of State saying that there will not be reimbursement for any funds expended for refugee resettlement. At that time, we had 419 new arrivals still within the first 3 months of coming here who were in need of support, in need of regular services to help get kids enrolled in school, get access to healthcare, find permanent housing, and on down the line. That order really meant that we could no longer be expending funds or time and effort and be able to expect that effort would be reimbursed by the federal government under our normal contracts. Of course, there was the general freeze that occurred on January 27th, which was ultimately rescinded just the next day. But the effect of that was ongoing for many months, and the release of some of those federal funds still remains subject to lawsuit. On the 31st, we had to make the very challenging decision to furlough 90 staff members, or 60% of our staff, across our sites here in St. Louis and in Springfield. This was a necessity to be able to have us continue to be able to offer service and be able to provide service at a time where economic uncertainty was reigning. In February, the federal government ended contracts with their refugee resettlement providers with whom they'd been engaged in contracts since 1979 for a great many of them, including our affiliate organization, the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. And in May, delays to reimbursements really stretched on for services rendered back in November and December. The International Institute was owed $940,000, which was not ultimately repaid until June, a challenging period to say the least. And there was a federal court ruling in June that reestablished the resettlement contracts, which still are in place today. And ultimately were dealt a major blow in July when House Resolution 1 eliminated the access for refugees to federal nutrition assistance program, as well as Medicare and Medicaid. The access to SNAP or food stamps was effective with the start of this federal fiscal year, this last October 1st, and access to federal health care will likewise be terminated in October of this year. We, of course, scrambled to meet food need for individuals who are still without a green card, as that has become the eligibility standard for accessing these services going forward. And true enough, refugees are able to access their green card 12 months after arrival. However, many delays in the issuance of those documents have caused people to wait an additional 18 months beyond that initial year period in order to have a green card in hand, all the while, of course, making them ultimately ineligible to access these programs that are critical to meeting families' needs. In October, we did hear a proclamation from the executive office establishing a ceiling of 7,500 refugees, which was the lowest established ceiling in 45 years of the modern refugee resettlement program. In November, a federal memo that was released in the wake of the tragic killing of the National Guardsman in Washington, D.C., really restricted further access in a number of ways that we'll touch on shortly here. But it also opened the door to what they call re-review for more than 230,000 refugees that were admitted in the period from 2021 to 2025. We are not yet certain what this additional review will look like, but ultimately it means everybody that we resettled as an organization over that period is potentially subject to this re-review and reestablishment of the circumstances that caused them to flee to the United States in the first place. The International Institute had to respond. There was not going to be an issuance from the federal government that provided ultimately for our organization or those that we serve. We got to work in the spring to raise $580,000 to support new arrivals in March. Those 419 individuals who recently arrived, who were cut off from federal funds, were able to receive the full equivalent of their federal stipend through the money raised here locally in this community by many members, including maybe some on this call. And so I want to thank everybody who contributed to that campaign to ensure that every refugee that arrived received the supports that they needed to get their lives started here in the United States. This also helped us, allowed us to be able to provide time and effort through staffing to be able to support case management for that period of time as well. We were able to return to work as federal projects got back online, and we're able to free up funds. We were able to return 27 of our 90 furloughed staff members back into positions here at the International Institute. This situation, as challenging as it has been, has really forced many really fruitful collaborations, not just within advocacy organizations, but certainly in that space. But the Immigrant Service Provider Network, the Missouri Immigrant Policy Coalition, the Regional Response Team, and many other tables where we were able to get together with many of our colleagues and those that advocate for immigrants in our community to talk more about what we can do, not just from an advocacy perspective, but from a service perspective. How can we better collaborate to more efficiently serve folks in a time of great need? And I know Ann Whitman from Welcome Neighbor and Diego Bente from Casa de Salud and others are on this call today. And I want to thank them explicitly for their partnership, not just around these coalition tables, but directly with the International Institute as well. We've also turned our attention to really communication and training. With so many changes happening at the federal level to various statuses, this is a lot of conflicting information is really making its way to those that we serve, and that can be impacted by misinformation. And so we are taking the position of supporting clear messaging, actionable messages that we can deliver to those that we serve to help them make sense of a highly dynamic environment, especially as it comes to immigration. So we've done this through partnership with St. Francis and the Micah Project and others, hosting power of attorney workshops, talking with community stakeholders about engaging with ICE, training our staff to how to respond in case there is a raid at our location here, but really kind of resorting to maybe what we might call non-traditional means of communicating, where previously we'd relied on communicating broadly through social media or other broader platforms. Our communication has really taken a more narrow focus, focusing in on delivering specific messages to those that we serve, and not always in a very public manner. These have all been ways that we've had to respond to our environment. But there has been some recent policy changes and impacts that I did want to make sure we were queuing up, because these will certainly impact our work and this region's continued interest in expanding population by welcoming immigrants in the year ahead. Several changes that I wanted to point to were sort of this new data on what is actually happening with visa revocations and deportations. The USCIS actually made mention on their website of more than 100,000 visas that have been revoked in 2025, and that is a 150% increase over visa revocations in 2024. And these include people like Somalis who had been here on temporary protected status, who summarily saw that status removed and no longer being a viable status for their legal continued presence in the United States. There are many, many groups that have been impacted by similar decisions over the course of the last year. This most recent revocation of TPS for Somalis is expected to impact somewhere between 700 and 2,400 individuals, again, based on people in that group's ability to transfer to a different status, impacts that range of those that could be impacted. New data also from the Brookings Institution indicates that 2025 is the first year in more than 50 years where the U.S. experienced negative net migration. Negative net migration occurs when there is more out-migration than there is international in-migration to the United States. Of course, eliminating many legal pathways for entry into the United States, including asylum, led to a much smaller inflow of immigrants than in many years past. And then you add on top of that, of course, nearly 300,000 deportations and somewhere between 200,000 and 400,000 voluntary departures. It's easy to see why Brookings anticipates there being a loss of somewhere between 40 and 200,000 immigrants in our country over the course of the last year. I did include here a quote from the Washington Post that says, in the lead up to the Trump's crackdown, nearly all growth of the U.S. population and workforce had been fueled by immigration because of an aging native-born population and declining fertility rates. This is restating, I think, in many ways what we saw in those reports that led to the formation of the Mosaic Project, and really something that the Mosaic Project and many of us are actively working against, this shrinking of the labor market, this shrinking of our community here in St. Louis. Again, while immigration has played a major part in the expansion of the American workforce, it can still play a major part in the expansion of the workforce here in our region. We'll talk more about that shortly. Other updates to bans, either full or partial bans on travel. There were a total of 7 new countries added to the ban list that you can see here. These are countries that are predominantly in Africa or in Central America. And the partial ban list was added to it, again, predominantly African countries. These bans are, again, subject to a lot of different factors, including, of course, travel for international events such as the World Cup, which will be taking place. And we understand that a new process for visas for folks from these countries could be created in the near future. However, somebody from any of these countries listed in the first group who would have an interest in coming here or even receiving a job offer would not really necessarily be allowed to enter the United States based on their country's inclusion in this full ban list. This is the type of information we feel incumbent upon to share with folks on a regular basis as these updates really take place. Other policy changes and their impacts. Expanded enforcement operations, of course, what we've seen in Minneapolis with more than 2,000 federal immigration agents operating in the city with more promised. This type of tactic, of course, Minneapolis is not the first city to see this sort of show of force from the federal government, and it's likely not to be the last. And that sort of hangs over the heads of a lot of folks in our community, or of course, over the heads of many immigrants who worry about the type of environment that creates for them and their safety and their family's safety. There are, according to USCIS, there's more than 68,000 people in immigration detention nationwide. And of that group, 25% have a criminal conviction. Really going against that general narrative that the folks in immigration detention are facing deportation are in fact criminals. If even expanding that a little bit further to include pending criminal charges, which could really be anything, there would still be functionally a little bit less than half of all folks in immigration detention actually having a conviction or any criminal charges. And 50% have civil violations, and these could be violations of illegal entry or illegal continued presence based off of one's visa category. And it could also be things like traffic tickets or these other ways that we have seen enforcement taking place on roadways that have led people to immigration detention. And these are hardly criminal acts, but these are all, I think this information is illuminating as it really, I think, sheds light on who exactly is in detention. And also want to point out that detention is occurring across the country thanks to these 287G agreements. Local law enforcement, local jurisdictions are able to contract with the federal government to provide services for federal immigration detention, but also federal immigration actions. So in terms of just the detention facilities, you see the St. Genevieve County Jail, Ozark County Sheriff's Office, Phelps County Jail, Kansas City Hold Room, and Greene County Jail all have active agreements to be able to hold folks who are part of that number of 68,990 folks in immigration detention. There are many more jurisdictions within the state that are cooperating with these 287G agreements in other ways, whether that's through enforcement action or using space that they have available to them. But this is merely a list of detention facilities. So I think a lot of people see what's happening on the news and think, well, that's not happening in my community. That's not happening here. And this is really meant to show that this is happening. This is happening nationwide to varying degrees, of course. But immigration customs enforcement activity has occurred and is continuing to occur in our region. So what does all this add up to, right? We see really an upending of the federal immigration system with this focus more on deportation and funding deportation operations than really adjudicating any sort of claims or overseas processing or anything that would really have a surefire way of vetting and screening folks to admit into the United States. Right now, the focus is clearly on deportation and deportation alone, again, causing many different delays in the issuance of critical visas and work cards and other documents that immigrants that are, of course, present and authorized in the United States need. This really has, led to, of course, these revocations of people who entered legally, people who have been here for many years with legal status have seen that status ripped away from them in many different ways. There's this further restriction of legal pathways to immigrate to the United States, which has caused this downturn in immigration at historic levels. What is the overall impact on immigrants? Really, it's creating this fear of engaging in a government system when folks that are here have regular appointments that they've been showing up to as required, and when they continue to show up to those, except now they run the risk of being yanked for deportation. It creates this fear of interacting with law enforcement, and broadly speaking, leading to underreporting of crimes and further making immigrants targets of violence because of this fear of reporting. There's lack of access to the social safety net that has been here to support food needs and health needs for refugees. And so organizations like ours, in partnership with others, crafting additional ways to continue to support folks while they get up on their feet, has made sort of resource navigation part of immigrants' role much more challenging as these are shifting sands that continue to reform. Of course, again, there's general mistrust and suspicion that has been directed at immigrants from members of the community, and that is not a welcoming environment for anybody, and can create this notion of pulling back from engagement in civic life, which is what we're seeing. Folks not take their kids to school, folks not reporting for work because of fear of being ripped apart. Enforcement is happening on the roadways in our region and beyond. And so going to work or taking your kid to school can be a very challenging task in an environment like this. Overall, what does that impact St. Louis, or how does it impact our region? The population growth that we have enjoyed, that Mosaic has celebrated, the main method of that has been international in-migration. We saw actually growth in the region in 2023 because of international in-migration. We had more than 12,000 international immigrants come to our region. That is not going to happen in 2025. So what can we do to retain, again, folks that are leaving the region? What can we do to make this region more appealing to them in many ways that begins and ends with welcoming? But there are many ways that is expressed, and we can talk more about that in a moment. There is a lot of uncertainty, and that creates fear, and that fear weakens the community. As I mentioned, folks not going to doctor's appointments, not taking their kids to school, and not reporting to work makes those communities less healthy, less well, and setting up less for success in the long run. So what can we do about this? How can we support folks in this hour of need? There are many ways to do this. There's two organizations I want to call out specifically: the Regional Response Team, housed at the St. Louis Community Foundation, and the Rapid Response Coalition, housed at the Ashray Foundation. Both these groups are working to connect folks in need to supports. Rapid Response Coalition operates an ICE hotline for those that are impacted by ICE activity to call to learn about supports that they can get for their family members in detention, and also reporting ICE activity in the region to help others who might be in need of support. Of course, organizations like ours are always very thankful for the time, talent, and treasure that volunteers and those that are supporting immigrants give to our organizations. There's, of course, the International Institute and the Immigrant Service Provider Network, but I've mentioned others on this call, including the Mosaic Project and others who are doing this work every day on behalf of people who are in need of these supports. You can refuse to contribute to misinformation. There's many well-being folks who see a white van in their neighborhood and will take to their Nextdoor app and say, ICE is here. That sort of reaction can create more fear and more worry than is maybe necessary. Again, working with the Rapid Response Coalition, if you or anybody you know would like to learn more about how to react to ICE in your community, I would really refer you to the coalition for that. Patronize immigrant businesses and immigrant events. There are many immigrant groups in our community who are still here, who still are celebrating their culture, their life ways, their holidays. Where you can, please consider attending these events. That brings safety and shows solidarity with the challenges that these communities are facing every day. And patronize those immigrant businesses. There are folks that are really living the American dream every day, and your support will mean a lot to them. Be visible in your support for immigrants. Again, showing up to these spaces, having these conversations, dispelling myths, sharing any of the information you heard on this call is one way to do that. And also advocating for sound policies right here in our region. As Suzanne said, there's a lot we can do at the federal level, but there's much that is happening locally that can have an impact. We'll talk about that in a second. As far as our needs as an organization, the International Institute operates a food pantry every Friday, and here's a list of some of the items that we are soliciting. Of course, we welcome grocery store cards that can be handed out to families in need, but we would love some culturally appropriate foods, as you see listed here, as well as household supplies and baby supplies that are very much needed. Again, we're serving about 1,000 individuals through our food pantry on a monthly basis, and that number has risen over the last several months. And there's contact information for Kelly Moore on this flyer if you'd like to learn more about how you can support that effort. We're also engaging in a winter coat drive, which will continue through the end of this month. If you or an organization you're affiliated with would like to take up a collection of coats and winter wear for folks that we serve, please reach out. And again, more contact information on this flyer. Of course, at the International Institute, we always have volunteer opportunities to engage in our education programming, including youth mentoring, our after-school program, literacy tutoring, GED, and these are generally weekly commitments. And so if you do have an interest, please reach out to Claire Baldeck, who can give you more information, or you can sign up using that volunteer link. As far as advocacy, the Missouri Immigrant Policy Coalition, Rev Ed, Hispanic Leaders Group, and others, including the Hispanic Chamber, are coming together to engage in a Hispanic Capital Day on February 17th. There's a link at the bottom of this flyer where you can sign up and take a bus and learn more about the policy priorities. But I do serve as a member of the Missouri Immigrant Policy Coalition, and want to let you know about a couple of bills that the coalition has taken up, including HB 2134, which requires approval of local elected bodies to enter, for law enforcement to enter in these 287G agreements, these agreements that allow local law enforcement to liaise with ICE. The requirement is that a local elected body provides that final approval. The others are House Bill 2518 and 2522, which expand professional licensure for work-eligible immigrants in Missouri. There are some practices and spaces where immigrants are being frozen out of being able to sit for certification, and these bills improve that process to ensure that we don't lose out on talent here in our region. We do work to continue to recruit people to this region, and one of the ways that we do that is through the Move to STL initiative. Move to STL is going around across the country to tout St. Louis as a place where folks can put down roots and build their American dream due to our affordability and abundance of open positions locally. This is a program that really reaches out to everybody in any community where they are traveling, provides transportation and resettlement stipends for folks of Hispanic or Asian descent. And this is really, again, recruiting U.S. citizens and U.S. permanent residents to make that choice to come here to St. Louis. And to that effect, on the 29th, we'll be hosting a showcase of our regional workforce partnerships at 18 Rails. You can use the QR code here to register for that event. We'll be showing ways that employers can be engaged in this effort, and by sharing open job opportunities so that we can continue to recruit folks to this community. And this program has been operating since the start of 2024, and since then has welcomed more than 450 individuals to the region. So this is work that continues despite what is happening at the federal level. And of course, our Afghan Outreach Initiative. This is a program that likewise served more than 230 ultimately individuals in the calendar year 2025, and has welcomed more than 415 individuals since it started in January of 2024. There's been many positive outcomes from this, including we have our Afghan Entrepreneurship Grant that has supported more than a dozen and a half now Afghan entrepreneurs through small grants to help them grow or start their business here locally in St. Louis. Application announcement is coming out a little bit later this week, so keep your eye on our socials for that. What's more in 2026? What can we continue to do? The International Institute is committed to continuing to serve the more than 6,300 immigrants and refugees who've arrived in St. Louis since 2020. There are many people in this community that are seeking help, they're seeking support and seeking solidarity and answers. And we remain committed to continuing to do that with your help and the support of this community. We can continue to stand as a welcoming community for those seeking to restart their lives. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop my share and turn it back over to Annie for our Q&A.
Okay, I was muted. My apologies. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation, Suzanne and Craig. Like I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions or comments, please keep putting them on the Q&A. We have 6 minutes to go. I tried to answer some of the questions that were directly referred to Mosaic, but maybe one of the questions that Blake, you would like to take that? Oh, I think it is answered. I think it's a comment. The voluntary departure that Blake mentioned, contributing to negative net migration, does this include any US-born citizens who have moved out of the country?
Yes, this is total out-migration regardless of status or length of stay in the United States. So this is comprehensive in terms of that view of who is leaving the United States.
And STL101 is also asking if we have the flyer to the code drive, which I did put the link from their Facebook and for the food pantry. And I just wanted also to remind everyone that we'll be sending the materials of the things that were discussed with the attachments. So like the professional connector flyer, the hiring challenge flyer on the follow-up email as well. So I can include those flyers as well when I send the email to everybody who that registered. And somebody is asking, what is the website phone number for the rapid response correction? I don't think I have it, but I can look it up.
I can go ahead and put that in the chat here for everybody to have as well.
Yeah, that'll be great.
We are both organizations are pretty active on Instagram and Facebook. We share out events and opportunities. Mosaic does that for all of our partners, obviously the Institute as well. So I encourage all of you to sign up for our e-news. That's a good way to stay connected to opportunities and news, volunteer opportunities, etc. Follow all of us on social media, Facebook and Instagram. And what was my last? And then just check our events calendar as well. Yeah, and again, feel free to reach out directly by email. I know that information will also be included.
As well, yes. So I think that is it on the questions that we had. Again, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Suzanne and Craig, for this wonderful presentation. The recording to this will be posted at some point this week on our YouTube channel, and I'll be sending the link as well to everybody that registered and the PowerPoints, as well as all the links and the flyers that they referred to the presentation today. Thank you so much, everyone who registered and attended this presentation. And our next STL101 is going to be in February, the second week of February. I'm still finalizing on that, and we'll be sending that announcement sometime next week. It will be in person, that one, because we normally do this in person, but except for January and June and July. So again, my name is Annie. Reach out to me, Suzanne or Blake, if you have any questions. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.